In the spring of 2005, I was leading a mission high up in the Afghan mountains with Special Forces soldiers and a large contingent of Afghan National Army soldiers who had never been in combat before. And our handful of Green Berets were distributed across 7 maneuver areas that were very remote, very isolated, and saturated with Taliban fighters. The period of time that we were in was such that the United States had really not pushed into this particular area, and so the bad guys had the run of the entire area. We were literally surrounded on purpose. And even our headquarters element was immersed in a little village with Taliban fighters all around us. And on about the 8th day of the mission, things started to fall apart. It started with one of our maneuver elements getting in heavy contact and a dear friend of mine being killed in that engagement, and his team frantically trying to get him out of that area so that they could get back in the fight, but they were cut off. It was high altitude, communications were terrible. At the same time, other elements that were on maneuver activities also came in close contact with the enemy, and they were highly outnumbered. They were asking for air support, they were asking for field artillery, medical evacuations, and my little battalion, or my little headquarters element, was overwhelmed as we were trying to manage this. And all the while, we were getting reports that enemy forces were maneuvering on us. And all of this was running through my mind as I was trying to manage it. And the threat kept getting closer, kept getting closer. I couldn't stop thinking about my friend, I'll call him Joe, who had been killed, and his teammates that were trying to get him out of there. That kept coming into my field of view. And it was very difficult for me to prioritize and figure out what I needed to do next. We have a saying for this in the military: when things get this way, that the enemy is danger close. And it's, there's friends of mine who have led in combat where it was even worse, where they were, belly to belly with the enemy, or the enemy had gotten inside the perimeter and was running amok, or insider threats. But it's all what we call danger close. And it's where the elements of your plan and your structure and your boundaries fall apart, and you are now facing chaos. Things are falling apart. And as I think about this current crisis that we're going through and everything that's happening, I think about people at home right now, whether they're stay-at-home moms or dads, or whether they're people who are working hard for a living and maybe they've been laid off. They're trying to figure out what to do. Their revenue has been cut down dramatically, or maybe not at all. And everything they know about the world has just completely been upended. And it reminds me so much of that moment in my life where everything was danger close and things were falling apart. And it got me to thinking that it's time to put out some content where we talk about that, where we talk about danger close, how to lead yourself when things are falling apart. And I want to welcome you to this video on this, because I think it's something that is on all of our hearts. I'm fortunate to be joined by Dr. Diego Hernandez. Now, Doc he's part of my team. He and I are friends. We go way back. He is a clinical psychologist.
All right, you got it.
I always get that mixed up. He's also a high-performance coach. He works with professional athletes. He works with special operations soldiers, SEALs, Delta Force members. And he's an expert in so many things in terms of mental performance, but certainly in the realm of trauma and how fear acts on the body, but also on how we condition the mind to think and act in times of stress, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I want to welcome you, Doc. Thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so for those of you watching, what I want you to think about is, for the next 30 to 45 minutes, we're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your life and what's going on, and some moves that we believe you can make from the mental performance realm, but also from the special operations realm, where when things are danger close, how do you lead yourself when everything's falling apart? And Doc, I jotted down a few things today that someone watching this might be feeling right now.
Right.
Okay, so here's this, and these are in no certain order. One, worried about getting sick, and worried about loved ones getting sick.
Absolutely.
Okay, everyone is in some type of quarantine, not quarantine, but isolation. We call it social distancing, but that can actually lead to isolation.
Right.
And in some cases, we're starting to see that as we film this. We're a week or so into it, so there's very little human engagement going on right now. The kids are at home.
Right.
For a lot of us, and that's unexpected, well before summer. They are now expected to go through remote education, whatever that means.
Right.
And so, and a lot of us are homeschooling, even though we never intended to do that.
Right. Yeah, and trying to work and trying to manage everything else.
Correct. We're worried because maybe our spouse or ourselves, we've lost our revenue. Maybe we've been laid off. Maybe our hours have been cut. Maybe we're self-employed or we own a business and the revenue is just not there. So how are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to put food on the table? There are people whose 401ks, because of what's happened with the market, you and I were talking about this, that that they're watching their personal wealth and their savings deplete.
Right.
There's lots of media and white noise out there that's distracting us and pulling us out, and people are scared. Kids are scared. We're wondering, we're anxious. We're wondering what we do. And then finally, there's this collision of personal worlds where, maybe we had our personal space at home, and now all of a sudden,
It's all together.
everybody's crammed in together. So with those things in mind, what I thought we would do is you and I talk about some things that we can do to deal with this, and just in a very straight talk, no BS kind of way. With your background as a mental health professional, my background as a special operator in combat, maybe we can suggest some moves that folks can make. What do you think about that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things that I always like to start with, because at Rooftop Leadership, we take a focus on deeper impact through better human connections, right? And so as a former Green Beret, human connection, I know, is the essence to leadership, whether you're in a crisis or not. And what I always remind people, and what I'm going to remind you watching this right now, is humans are still primal.
Right.
We are still that same creature we were 250,000 years ago. We're a well-dressed Neanderthal.
Right.
We are meaning-seeking.
With toys.
That's with toys. We don't know how to use them, really. Meaning-seeking, emotional, social story animals is what I always say we are. Meaning-seeking, we must have purpose in our life. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we're wired for connection, and we're wired for our activities to have purpose. Whether it's like you said, putting food on the table. It's like we go all the way back to hunting, gathering, to farming. Everything else we were doing, has a purpose and a meaning. Now that's almost all taken away, but those responsibilities are still there.
Right, we still crave it.
Right.
We're the only animals, correct me if I'm wrong on this, on the planet that actually crave purpose and look to the future.
Right.
Okay, emotional. We're emotional creatures. Our limbic brain doesn't even understand language, yet it usually makes the big calls and it acts off emotion, right?
Right. Absolutely. And the body can't even tell the difference between excitement and moderate level of fear, because it's the same physical thing that's going on. It's just our perception and how we label it.
So an emotional response. And again, what we're trying to do here is to help all of you understand that this is who we are below the surface. And so we need to know this to lead ourselves. So as an emotional creature, if I feel that stress that I was talking about on that mission because I've lost somebody and I don't know how I'm going to lead through it, that feeling, that physiological symptomatic feeling is exactly what someone might be feeling as they watch their stocks erode on their 401k.
Right.
They feel the same kind of things.
Oh, absolutely. So stop watching it. I mean, this is an unprecedented time. We haven't stopped as a nation like this since 9/11, and before that, since Pearl Harbor and World War II.
Yeah.
But during those times, our leadership stepped in and provided guidance for us to how to channel that energy, how to actually take an action that we feel like we're part of something. That's where that meaning comes in.
Right.
Where we're able to do that. Now it's up to us to be able to provide that leadership for our own families, our communities, and our employees and our businesses.
So hold that thought, because we're going to come back to that. So meaning-seeking, emotional, social. We're wired for connection, right? We have to connect to survive.
Right, and those emotions are connected to the actions. I mean, the body, has a fear response because it identifies danger. And this danger, we don't know when it's going to end or how it's going to impact our family. So we spend a lot of time focused on things that we have very little control over, but we can control how we respond to it.
Right, right. So to review this, just to make sure you understand, we're animals that must have purpose in our life. We are emotional creatures, so don't get mad at yourself if you're feeling emotional right now. It's just energy, and we're going to talk about how to manage that energy. And we're social. We sit atop the food chain above great whites and tigers because we have this innate ability to form connections.
Right.
And so during this social distancing, this is going to form challenges, so we need to know that. And then finally, story animals. We are narrative creatures. We actually use story to communicate, and we have for thousands of years, and this can be a great tool for parents and leaders watching this, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, this is an opportunity to actually go deeper in some of these areas and look at what matters, because your range of emotions are so important, but most of the time in our daily life, we neglect certain feelings.
Right.
And they're going to be coming up right now, and it creates an opportunity to look at it. It's like, does this feeling fit the situation? And if it does, we can learn from that. But if it doesn't, we need to put it aside and start focusing on what's important.
Cool. All right. So we've framed who we are, right? So here's the tagline: when crap gets real in your life, you're going to get tribal. Just remember that. You're going to, and purpose and emotion and social connection and narrative or story are going to be the realities you always need to consider with yourself and with those that you lead. Now, let's get into it. So the first, I've got 5 R's that I want to suggest to people watching this right now that I think they can use in their life to lead themselves while things are falling apart. Those pain points that I talked about, even if you've lost your job, everything's falling apart, right? You're watching your stocks go down. You don't know how you're going to pay the bills. It seems like that all is lost moment. The first R is reframe. Talk about that.
What we need to do is to get perspective on what is taking place. We need to regroup. We need to also just kind of let go, and just the things that we're worried about losing, just write them off. Just imagine that you've lost it, so that way you can regroup and look at the resources that you have, the connections and relationships. You can look at what matters, because that's going to put you into motion on what to do next.
Right.
Because it may feel like it's all lost, but it's not.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, we're early into this.
Right.
And we're going to need to take some steps going forward, because it will recover and it will return, and we want to be in a good place, not just to get through this, but we want to be in a good place for what comes next.
So you brought up something earlier. You said that, the higher up leadership is probably not going to inspire us. Anybody feeling inspired right now? Anybody looking at what's going on in D.C. feeling terribly inspired, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on politically? I'm not. So I think it's up to us to do the reframe ourselves. And I want to offer a couple of things that we can do to do this. The first thing is, if we're going to reframe and we're caught up in everything that's happening to us, we're watching our retirement erode, we've lost our job, we've got to move ourselves from a sympathetic state of fight, flight, or freeze down to a parasympathetic state of calm and connect, right?
Right, because the sympathetic state is action. That's the energy you feel when you're afraid or you feel like you've got to do something, and it's pushing your body to do that. To reframe, it's actually part of how the limbic system works. It's called appraisal. It's like, is this good stress or is this bad stress? Is this something I can do about this, or is there nothing I can do about this? And that's going to kind of determine the course of your thoughts and how your body's going to respond. So when we reframe it, we want to move away from that fear state to where I don't know what to do, to what can I do?
So to say it another way, when you're feeling this loss of work or job or panic, it's like a snake in the bushes. So the response you're having is 250,000 years old, but it doesn't really serve you in this sense. We need to reframe and tell ourselves a new story, right? We're narrative creatures. And so here's a way to bring your emotional temperature down, because leadership is the management of energy, as Professor Clausen says. We're going to bring the emotional temperature down so that we can reframe. And we have a thing at Rooftop Leadership called pre-engagement preparation. And I think it's appropriate here, don't you?
Right, yeah.
So this is a combination of stuff that I learned from Dr. Belisa Veronich in her book, Breathe, from Jean-Louis Rodrigue, a movement coach that teaches this in performance, and then Dr. Diego on his 3 questions that we can ask ourselves. And here's how it goes. You sit up in your chair, go someplace quiet, right? And it only takes a couple of minutes. Close your eyes, put your hand on your belly, and we're going to start with 3 lower body breaths using our mouth to breathe. We're going to try this with me. Expand our belly on the inhale. And then just squeeze belly to spine on the exhale. Expand. Squeeze. Expand. Squeeze. And now from this place, we're going to say out loud 3 times very slowly, I have time. I have time. I have time. And now you should start to feel your pace slow down, and then with your eyes still closed, you're going to ask yourself 3 questions and then answer them out loud. So I'll do it. Who am I? I'm Scott Mann, husband, father, Green Beret connection coach. Why am I here? I'm here to help these leaders lead through a danger close situation, to lead themselves when things fall apart. What do they need from me? That's the 3rd question. They need me to share my experiences, my scars, my mistakes. They need my authenticity. They need Doc's authenticity and his expertise. They need everything we've got. And then I just open my eyes, move around a little bit, and there you go. And you should feel yourself in a different state.
Absolutely.
And you can check in with yourself like this multiple times per day. And now we're ready to reframe. So now we're ready to reframe. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the actual reframing. You always talk about how, the world has changed, right? So what do we need to do big picture to reframe that panicked or fear-based state that we're in to something better?
Well, a big part of it's what you just went over. We need time for physical activity, exercise, because we're working with our bodies. We're mammals, and we're designed to do certain things.
Yep.
That fear state is going to provide all this energy. We've got to get that out and channel it in a useful way. But getting to this parasympathetic state is really important because the resources to think about the future are not available when you're stressed or panicked.
Right.
So you can't connect with those parts of your brain that you need to sort of think some of this stuff through.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. One thing that just recently I was on a call with a very, very senior commercial banker, and he's running a command center. And, he was really going through some anxiety moments, big anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it was mostly working from home. And it was a lot of the stuff like watching his own, nest egg erode away to nothing. And what we did was we did the PEP, and then I asked him to write for 3 to 5 minutes on what do you believe your purpose is right now. And he did that, and you could just feel the shift in him after he did that. And he said, my purpose is to make sure that this organization is standing when the dust clears, mm-hmm. and that all of my people are okay. And guess what? After he had that, he had such clarity in his voice that was a week ago. Right. And I haven't heard from him since. I've checked in with him, and he's sticking and moving, and everything's built around mm-hmm. that purpose because we're meaning-seeking creatures, right?
Yeah, and then what happens is once you've gotten to that state and you've got the framework and your nervous system calms down, then your brain is free to start thinking about things that you can do.
Right, yeah. And as humans, if you've ever heard of Maslow's needs, mm-hmm. I know you've heard of that, but at the base of that are things like, safety.
Right.
We want to know we're safe, food, water, shelter. But at the top of it is self-actualization, mm-hmm. right? Is purpose and meaning. And so for all of us, we are meaning-seeking creatures. So if you can just take a few minutes and write down, why do you do what you do right now? What's your purpose right now in this moment? Look at your children. Look at your loved ones. Look at your home. And just reflect and see if you can't arrive at that. And that clarity of purpose can help a lot, can't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The other thing I want to bring up is you talked about this in the reframing, and we talked about this last night on our call with webinar with mm-hmm. Bo Eason, and it is this ability to reinvent our dreams. Absolutely. Or reconnect with our dreams, to reinvent work, as Jan Rutherford says. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, nobody grows, learns, or advances on the couch.
Right.
You need pressure in order to bring out the potential. And so all the stuff that we're going through, I mean, we're all struggling and suffering in different ways, but we're also faced with opportunities.
That's right.
And these opportunities can allow us to dig into some stuff that's going to come up. And if we do the work, we can be more present and more available.
And one of the things we can do is be a learning animal, as my friend Chris White says. Continue to look for ways to learn. Continue to push our kids to learn while they're at home, even if it's stuff that's unconventional. But if we're learning, we're open, aren't we? And if we're open, we're focused more on abundance than scarcity. This is the one thing I want to leave with you on this reframe piece, is if you just do what comes natural in this environment, you will focus on scarcity, because that's what we do at a primal level. We worry about having enough.
Scarcity, and then avoiding those feelings it provokes through entertainment, eating, drinking,
Right.
other stuff like that.
Yeah. So we need to also, once we get clarity of purpose, ask yourself, what can I control and what can I not control? Write those down for 5 minutes, set them aside, and focus on what you can control, right? And then also, the final thing on this, there's a lot of distractions like you talked about: drinking, self-medicating, binge watching on television. No dreams happen on the couch. And we have a unique opportunity in history right now to reframe our direction in life. The media is another big distraction, or it can be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the media operates on what's called a fear-based message.
Right.
And in order to maintain your attention, they want to activate your nervous system. And we're so overactivated with it that we don't even know how to respond when it's like a real threat or real danger. Actually, some of my clients and coaching clients too, that we've been working with, some anxiety and fear that they've had, right now they're calm and they're in a good place. One is we've worked on building the tools to handle it something real, but also they're recognizing that, wow, this is a real situation. It's not an imaginary one. It's actually real. What can I do to operate in this environment?
Yeah, there you go. And there are some good journalists out there that are doing good work. Try to find you a reliable journalistic source. But my recommendation is, no matter what you're doing, turn the dadgum 24-hour news cycle off.
Right.
And if you're going to turn it on a few minutes a day, and that's it, because that stuff, it is a huge distraction. And as Bo Eason says, they speak to what we're not. They don't speak to who we are. Right. We're speaking to who we are. Right. So we're going to wrap up on reframe. So make sure you get yourself, use pre-engagement prep, get to a good parasympathetic state of calm and connect. Realize that the world has changed. Don't focus on things like you're a 401k eroding, the same way that I couldn't focus on my friend who had been killed in that mission. I had to set that aside and prioritize. Focus on what you can control. Really focus on that. We can deal with the other stuff later, right? Just journal for 5 minutes on what's important, what you can control and what you can't. Journal about the distractions that are going to get in your way, and then get after it. So the next thing is, after we've reframed, the second R that I have is reattune. And all I mean by that is to reacclimate, reorient on the world around us, because we are in a chaotic situation right now. Things are changing rapidly. So as agents in that arena, we have to reattune to our arena, right?
Well, absolutely. And just starting with the natural environment, we spend so much time in artificial environments that we're sort of disconnected. If you take this opportunity to watch the sun go up, watch the sun go down, just be outside for a little bit, listen for the birds and the different sounds around you. There's research on that shows that boosts your immune system, and it helps to settle your nervous system. Helps us to see that we're part of this planet and part of this environment.
Let me take that a step further. I do a lot of work in the performance space, and even with our play Last Out that we take around the country. And one of the things that I've learned from some very, very knowledgeable people is that we are sensory creatures. Our 5 senses really affect us, particularly vision, but all of our senses affect us, and they actually inform how we show up. So our mindset is actually informed by our senses. So if we get out, there's a reason we shoot these videos outside or by the fire pit. It's because if I allow, just check in with my senses, notice my breath, notice the smells that are on the air, feel my feet on the ground, notice things around me, the color of my wife's hair, whatever, then I start to show up and I start to get available to the people around me, and I start to be present.
Right.
And it's when we're present that we can actually respond appropriately.
Yeah, again, and when you're present, you're in this parasympathetic state. The rest of our daily lives is just go, go, go. It's very task-oriented, and it's pretty disconnected. That's why you're walking across the room and you forget why you walked across the room or what you were doing and have to retrace your steps.
And yeah.
And now that things are stopping and slowing down, it creates the opportunity because we have more time to do this.
And if you're wondering, like, if this is kumbaya stuff, every mission that special operators run when they come off helicopters, they do what's called SILs. They take off their hats, they take a knee. As soon as they get on the edge of the wood line and the chopper lifts off, and they stop, they look, they listen, they smell. They are primal creatures that are reattuning to their environment. If it's good for the SEALs and the Green Berets, it's good for you in a crisis as well, right? Check in with your senses when you just do a little reflection time. Notice what you smell. Notice your feet on the ground. And watch what happens. You'll actually be more present and ready to reattune. Now, let's go a step further on reattune. What I'm really getting at here is, things are happening fast. Agents are acting on me in my arena. How do I reattune, reacclimate? So one of the first things I do, and I learned this in recovery as an alcoholic, is I use the acronym HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And so, and a new one, -I, ill, symptoms of illness. So for our stay-at-home dads and moms, for those of you who are in the house now dealing with all the chaos, check in with yourself. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Because those emotional components or drivers of emotion are huge. And if you're not dealing with them because you're taking care of everybody else, you're going to go down.
Yeah, and to deal with them at a very basic level, you just need to acknowledge them. And it's okay to have these feelings. They're telling you something that you may get to later. If it's something important, it's like if you're checking in with yourself, oh, I feel tired. Well, maybe you need to rearrange your sleep schedule. I feel like I have a mild fever. Oh, it doesn't meet the criteria. If it meets the criteria, then you know to go do something about it. But if you're not paying attention, then you don't know whether it's a feeling that you need to track or whether it's a feeling that you need to put aside for something that's more of a priority.
When you reattune, you can just say to yourself, am I okay? Say it out loud. And then, yes, I'm okay. And then ask yourself, am I hungry? Nope. Am I angry? Nope. Am I lonely? I'm kind of lonely. I haven't talked to anybody. I'm going to go talk to my husband. Am I tired? Man, I haven't slept in 3 days. So then we need to deal with that, right? Those need to be dealt with. Then you can ask yourself, what's urgent right now?
Right.
What needs to be handled in the next 24 hours? What's important? That's what needs to be handled in the next, 24 hours to 3 days, right? And then what's not important? Set that aside. And then a last question I like to ask myself in terms of reattunement to my arena is maybe what's changed? And one more, who needs me right now? Right? If you just ask that question, that'll get you out of your head and focused on serving someone else, and that can really lower our temperature as well.
Right, and the same thing is true if the feeling is a little too strong and a little too much at the moment, that you can do the breath work, and if you just acknowledge it, and the meditation I like to teach people for that is to just accept the feeling, accept the sensations, focus on your breath, and identify that feeling and say, this is how I feel at the moment. I may not always feel this way. This is how I feel at the moment. Our feelings are often looking for acknowledgement, just like when we have a feeling when we're a little kid. As adults, there are feelings and emotions are telling us that something is important. Sometimes by acknowledging them, it actually dissipates the energy.
And understand that some of you might be going, well, this is BS, man. I don't have time for this touchy-feely emotional stuff. I'm running a household. I've lost my job. Guess what? This is what the most high-performing people on the planet do in combat. Right? Your emotional temperature is probably super elevated right now. And if it is, you can't lead because you're in a sympathetic state. You can't think clearly. So just grinding and gutting it out for 3 weeks is not going to get it done. We have to bring our emotional temperature down using the techniques we talk about. This is new science.
Yeah. And most of that gutting it through right now is you're trying to wait out a crisis. And there's longer-term implications here. And what's going to happen is you're just going to keep pushing, and you're not going to see an end point to it. And so your attention is actually focused on trying to preserve the past.
Yep.
When you need to be able to focus on the present. It's just like some of the athletes and operators that I work with. When you're focused on what you don't want to happen, you're wasting your energy. If you're running down the court and you're going, don't screw up. A good friend of mine said once, they said in combat, So when you stop trying not to get killed, you can do some amazing shit.
Yeah, it means letting stuff go, like we talked about in the first step of reframing. Just let that stuff go that you can't control. And you'll have to reattune and do that because the news media and these other distractions and these other stressors will reinsert themselves in your life. And so knowing that, oh crap, there I go again, I got to let that go. And again, what I did with that senior leader in the bank was I said, what's your purpose? Okay, good to go. All right, now, what are the distractions or how is resistance going to show up in your life and try to stop that? And then when it does, reattune and then make the moves that you need to do to set it aside, like Doc said. It's super important. Now, one other thing is, as we close this out, is have a way that you reattune for yourself. Ask yourself, am I okay? Go through the HALT-I acronym. Ask yourself what's changed. Check through what's urgent, what's important, what's not important, okay? And then ask yourself, who needs me right now and how can I be of value to others? That check-in right there will reattune you to your reality, and you need to do that now in chaos. In normal order, you could do that probably once in the morning, once in the middle of the day, once at the end of the day. And this is for stay-at-home moms too. Now that it's this chaotic, you may need to reattune to your arena twice an hour, but come up with a rhythm that helps you do that. Now that's the third R, rhythm. Let's get into rhythm for a second. So one of the things that we do in combat and special operations is we deal in chaos all the time. By definition, war is chaos. And we understand that at a personal level and an organizational level, that we can't function in chaos unless we have personal order in our life. I'm telling you the same thing right now. If the Bambinos are running all over the house, the place looks like a wreck, you feel like you're completely out of sorts, you don't know which way's up, you don't even know how you're going to pay next month's rent, we've got to start reestablishing some order and some discipline in ourself first, and then our immediate surroundings at a familial level, at a household level. As Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. Talk about the importance of rhythm and regimen with the human mind when it's dealing with chaos.
When you're dealing with chaos and there's too many possibilities, that's where we get caught up in running down all these rabbit trails of what might happen. Discipline and regiment actually kind of narrows the choices that we make, so that way we're free for the things that are always changing, that are always in motion. Steve Jobs talks about in his book about why he wore 20 of the same outfit and wear the same outfit every day. And he talks about his regiment and his rituals and how he's designed them to minimize those choices so he's free to think and to approach new situations with unique solutions.
Yeah, I love that. And so what I'm saying here is that we call it, in the military, we call it a battle rhythm in combat. You have a personal battle rhythm and you have an organizational battle rhythm. So as you're watching this, it might be a household battle rhythm and then your personal battle rhythm. And simply put, it is your regimen that you do every day. It's not a schedule. This is regimented. You do it every single day, whether you've lost your job, not lost your job, whether the kids are homeschooling and they have class right now online, or they're running around like crazy, whether your husband or wife is asking you questions over and over, it doesn't matter. Your regimen is your regimen. The same way in combat, if we have an update brief at 0730, it's happening even if there's a gunfight going on. Some people will manage the gunfight, but the regimented event will still happen. In rooftop leadership, we call it R4, regimen, ritual, rigor, and recovery. What I will basically say to it is this: you need this rhythm that you do every day. And you can just do it on a piece of white paper, right? Just write down AM, noon, PM. And then I want you to write down the things that you do for you to address mind, body, spirit, and maintaining your learning animal openness to new things. Talk a little bit about the mental part that people could do every day that would be helpful.
Part of it is to think about what is the value in this to you. Now, you might be listening because it's like you want some tools to get through this crisis. But again, this is an opportunity to start improving your quality of life regardless of what's going on. And fitting these things into your life is you're actually training and preparing to improve your quality of life. The learning part of it is not just figuring out into avoiding the danger. It's like, how do I improve and how do I excel? And it might sound ridiculous thinking about, say, oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic and a crisis and I should be reading and learning. It's like, well, life is going to continue. And what you do now is going to determine where you're at as that process starts to happen. And as you start gaining the tools and stuff, you could be in a very different position with your family as things start to recover. And then it's also going to have you better prepared if things shift and go sideways.
Yeah. So let me just go through my battle rhythm very quickly so that you get a sense of what I'm talking about. Every morning when I get up, I lay in the bed and I do 5 lower body breaths while laying on my back. You saw it earlier. Expand the belly, squeeze belly to spine. And I do that with my eyes closed. Then I get up and I do 25 push-ups. All you young people, don't be laughing. Your day's coming. I do 25 push-ups, and then I go in the bathroom. I hit both knees because I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I pray. And then I meditate in that position. And then I get on my feet, and I do more breathing, right? And then I drink 20 ounces of water, okay? I work on my story in front of the mirror for a few minutes. I check in with each of my senses, and then I go out and I do a workout in my gym. That's my morning rhythm. Whether I'm staying in the Marriott while I'm on the road or whether I'm at home because of a lockdown, that's happening every morning. My wife knows I do it. She keeps the kids away. She doesn't interrupt. That's my time. That's my morning ritual. Then at lunch, I do some more breathing. And then in the evening, one thing I left out is I journal. I journal every morning and I journal every evening, right? And then I do some breathing in the evening, and that's when I read a few pages from the book that I'm on. That's my battle rhythm, right? Find what works for you, but it should address, again, mind, body, spirit, and it should allow you to continue to be a learning animal. One last thing I'd like to say is journaling, especially right now, is so important because it allows you to address things like gratitude, prioritization. It does. It's really the tool that a lot of us are talking about. If you're looking for a great journal in this chaotic situation, never a better time to start journaling. The 5-minute journal is a fantastic journal. You can do it once in the morning, once in the evening. It literally takes less than 5 minutes.
That's right. And then gratitude is really important. That's part of my battle rhythm.
Absolutely.
You know, in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day and during the day when I have time.
Yeah, and you know, just list 3 things you're grateful for in the morning. Reflect on them. 3 things you're grateful for in the evening. It's really powerful. So the 5-minute journal, and there's a sister component to it called the productivity planner, where you can actually, it's a separate black journal. Just for a few minutes, you can write about what the most important thing is for the next day, and then evaluate at the end of the day. So those 2 simple journals are game changers for putting order into chaos. Get them online. I have no stock in that company. I just know that for beginning journalists or beginning leaders, it's great. Now I want to pivot into, okay, we've gone from rhythm, like that's our long-term thing. That's our vehicle that we drive through. And by the way, if you want to learn more about rhythm, you can reach out to Eric at rooftopleadership.com, and we have more products we can push you on rhythm. Also, go and watch the Leading Through Chaos video series. We have it there. We've got a lot of products on rhythm we can help you with. We have 2 more R's. The next one is relationships, right? In this social distancing age that we're in right now, we are social creatures, and isolation is a big factor. Talk about the power of relationships, because what I teach in Rooftop Leadership and in Special Forces is relationships are currency. What does that mean?
We're social creatures by nature, and we're wired for that exchange. It's like, even the last few days, what I've noticed is there's some of my neighbors who I've never really talked to who are all making an effort and being nice and helping and just trying to chit chat and stuff. And what that is we're building up our resources in our immediate community because we're faced with this external threat. And we don't know who we're going to be able to rely on. And we need that to function. We're actually wired for that exchange. We need feedback from each other. We need interaction, we need activity. When we don't have that, it has a really negative effect on the body. The nervous system will stay elevated. It's harder to get back to a parasympathetic state. The immune system doesn't respond as well to social isolation. So actually connecting and reaching out to others, you're actually boosting your immune system, just like being out in the sun for 20 minutes a day.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we're story animals, and so we make sense of the world through narrative. We tell ourselves a story based on what we see, and if you start to become isolated, then your perceptions become isolated, and you start to tell
Right.
yourself some really crappy narratives. Maintaining healthy social connection can help you move through that. The other thing that we know is I've studied relationships and human connection for years, and I teach on it. It's my expertise. Is we know that the human beings who have the best relationships, who have the strongest relationships, the deepest portfolio of relationships, they're usually the ones that are going to lead through crisis. They're the ones that are going to maintain their clients through all this. They're the ones that are going to emerge from the all clear healthy. Those who isolate and go dark and really just get scarcity based and fear based, we're not going to come out of this good. So relationships are really key. I want to give you some practical salient tips that you can do right now. One, I'd like you to sit down for 5 minutes with a pen and paper and write out from micro to macro. So from your household, working outward to your community, what are the most relevant relationships in your life right now? Numerically rank them, right? You know, spouse, children, parents, cousins, coworkers. Like, list out who are the absolute critical relationships in my life, and you know, especially in this crisis. And then draw a line. You know, if you want to do circles, draw a line to, is that line green, yellow, or red? In other words, is the relationship green? Is it strong? Yellow, it's red, non-existent, or I haven't reached out in a while. It's a great way to create a relationship diagram, a map of where you need to focus your efforts, because to the degree that you can keep your relationships healthy or even reestablish them in this crisis, to include with our clients and prospects, it's a powerful thing. We focused on that hard here at Rooftop, is where are our key relationships and how do we really cultivate and manage them during this crisis?
Oh, absolutely. And mapping them out is something that we do, you know, in therapy and strategic planning. It's like you need to maintain those connections and manage those relationships.
Another couple of tools that I'll give you is looking at the relationships right around you, like the people closest to you, whether it's the people in your household or your coworkers, your teammates. Is one, ask yourself this: how do I be a position player? How can I be a position player in this crisis? In other words, go up to folks and say, where do you need me right now? What position can I play for you? You'll be amazed at two things. One, the level of validation that will make with that person, and reciprocity that will come back your way. It's astounding. One of Braden, my son's teachers, called me this morning to give us instructions on Braden. She was asking these typical survey questions, and you know, you could just tell how tired she was. I mean, they've had a real thing dropped on them. And I said to her, hey, let me ask you a question. How are you doing? How can we play our position for you as parents? She sat there and she started crying. She said, you're the first person that's asked me how I'm doing. This is really hard for me. And you know, but the level of reciprocity that we have with her now as we go forward is key. And that's not a hard thing for us to do, to ask someone, what position can I play for you right now? And then the other thing is thoughtful, open-ended questions that let the other party respond in narrative. This is one of the best tools we can use at home as moms, dads, friends, is how, just like I asked her, what position can we play for you right now? I know you've really been through it with this remote education. What's been your greatest challenge with this? And then let them respond in story, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because as part of processing our feelings and what's going on, we need to be able to verbalize it and express it with each other. And asking those questions, you're actually inviting somebody to do some of that.
Yeah, let me tell you a great question to ask your teenagers. What annoyed you today? Right? If you're having trouble getting your kids to open up, just ask that question. And then just listen. Really lean in and listen. And then hear what they have to say. Notice your feet on the floor. Notice your breath. And just let those questions do the work. And then go deeper. Ask, and then what happened? Well, tell me more about that.
Yeah, and don't disrupt that by offering advice or your
Right.
opinion. Just you know, give them that space to just talk.
If you want to lead yourself when things fall apart, ask thoughtful, open-ended questions to those and struggle deeper than yourself, and you will become the most relevant person in the room, and you'll find new answers to your life. I'm so glad we got that on camera, because it's true. Yeah. Try it, and if I'm wrong, Wes, who is off camera, will buy you a steak dinner. Right. Okay, the final R is rediscovery. I believe rediscovery in this time is so important. You know, we have an opportunity, Doc, to really rediscover ourselves, reconnect with the people around us. You know, I was running too hard, man. I was on the road with the play. I was gone all the time. My youngest son, Braden, you know, who's just an amazing kid. He's a junior in high school. He's been holding down the fort on his own. And, you know, the other day we just went out in the cage and we just hit. And he said to me, Dad, I miss this, you know? And I just realized that, like, the most important thing in my life, I had just been gifted an opportunity to reconnect to that, to rediscover that. And I think for all of us who are watching this, it's true, right?
Yeah, and that's what our kids and our family and the people we care about the most want from us, our time and attention. And when we're so busy, even if when we're doing great things, I mean, I'm glad it stopped. I mean, I was like, I got a snow day. It's like there's you know, or a snow week or whatever, and it's like all my travel for the next couple of months, everything dropped off. So now I can focus on the things that matter, and things that were sort of in the background that I needed to get to, and actually, you know, writing more and pursuing some of the things that are going to set things up for what's next in the future.
What if we just sat still after this was over, this video, and we just wrote for 3 minutes, what really matters in my life? What really matters right now? And then go find those people that really matter, if you can, and tell them that. And then really focus on that relationship, that connection for the next few weeks. And don't forget to list yourself. Don't forget that rediscovery of self, to reinvent work, to reinvent dreams. This is a time of abundance, not scarcity. This is a time of order, not chaos. This is an opportunity for us to pursue dreams. And the inspiration for that is not going to come from on high. It's not going to come from Washington, D.C. It's not going to come from our 401k. It's not going to come from the things that we thought mattered the most. It's going to come from what we realize in this struggle that matters the most. And I think that's one of the most important things we can do as we close this out. Doc, what do we need to say that we haven't said to close this thing out?
I think when we try to hold on too much to the things that that we're trying to preserve, we don't realize that they're holding us back. You know, trying to hold on to the way that things were before all this started is actually holding us back from being present. And we can get to those relationships and those things that matter the most. You can find more meaning, more connection, and have some of the things that you really crave in your life by slowing down, by stopping, by checking in and making use of this time.
Yeah, I think it's just so important. And I just want to remind, as you watch this, I know you're going through it right now, but just know that you're the one that's going to lead us out of this. How you stabilize yourself, how you lead your household, your work, your community through this, it's our only shot. There will be an all clear. We will emerge from this, and it's how we respond in this crisis that will determine how we lead when the sun is shining again. It's how we reframe our life. It's how we reattune to our arena. It's the rhythm that we establish for ourselves as we go through this. It's the relationships that we identify, cultivate, and maintain through this crisis as social creatures. And it's how we rediscover ourself and the people we care most about and really, really dial into that as we go forward. That's the opportunity that exists in this. And it's only through leading yourself when things are danger close, as things fall apart, that we settle into this. And I'm reminded of a quote by Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. I've been reading a lot of Frankl lately because he endured, as a man of Jewish descent, he endured horrific treatment by the Nazis in a prisoner camp during World War II, and he suffered terribly. And he wrote, to this day, his writings on purpose and meaning as we go through suffering are so important. And he wrote that one of his biggest dreads in life is to not be worthy of the sufferings he endured. And I'm paraphrasing, but I just think that's such a powerful thing, is that the sufferings are what they are. The external factors are what they are. They're going to be there. Yeah. But it's how we show up.
Absolutely. And one of his other quotes, too, that it had a real big impact on my life coming across it in college was, he said that you might have my body in prison, but in my mind I'm free.
That's it, and we're free. So I hope this video has served you in some small way. I hope you know at Rooftop Leadership how much we really do not only care about you, but we need you to lead. We need you to lead yourself, and we need you to lead your family right now, and that's what this video is about. If it served you in any way, please share it with somebody else who can use it. That's all we ask. Our commitment through this entire thing is we're here with you every step of the way. We're not going anywhere. We're right there with you. The same way as I told my teams during that mission I talked about at the very beginning, I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. No matter what happens, I don't have the answers right now, but we'll figure it out together. And that's exactly what we will do as things get danger close and they fall apart, is to lead ourselves. Thanks for what you do. I'll see you on the rooftop.